September 1977, Spring Valley, New York. The air was turning crisp, the kind of night where the world felt quiet and predictable. In a rustic seafood restaurant, a 25-year-old mother of three was closing up for the night. She was just steps away from the police station, a place that should have been the safest corner in town. But in a matter of minutes, that safety vanished. There were no witnesses, no clear motive. And nearly 50 years later, no one has ever been held responsible. This is the story of Helen Soudani. Hello, friends. My name is Marcia, and this is Midwest Murders, where we explore the unsolved cases that still haunt America. Rockland County in the 1970s was in transition, a bridge between the frantic energy of New York City and the quiet rhythms of the suburbs. Family-owned businesses, restaurants, and small retail stores were becoming the backbone of the area. Helen Soudani, age 25, and her 28-year-old husband, Marty Soudani, owned the popular Aegean Grotto, a local restaurant in the Ramapost Shopping Center on Route 59 in the working-class community of Spring Valley. The area was busy, but familiar, the kind of place where business owners knew their customers and routines rarely changed. Restaurants like the Aegean Grotto weren't just businesses, they were family operations. Long hours, late nights, trust between owners and employees. It wasn't unusual for one person to stay behind to close up, count the money, lock the doors. And security by today's standards was minimal. No cameras, no alarms like we think of now, just routine and the assumption that nothing would happen. But the Aegean Grotto had a shadow over it. The restaurant had been broken into 4 times over the previous 3 years. Each time, the burglar had hidden inside and waited until everyone left before committing the theft. That pattern was known. And yet, on this night, there were no extra locks, no cameras, no alarms. Just the normal routine. That's part of what makes this case stand out, because violence like this, especially inside a local business, was not something people expected to see. Wednesday, September 28th, was a normally busy evening at the Aegean Grotto. Marty was home with the children. It was his usual night off. Considered the heart of the business, Helen had spent her evening tending to the duties of running a fast-paced restaurant. Helen loved the business she and Marty had built. She loved the customers and the community, and by all accounts, they loved her. After the last customer left and the staff went home, Helen settled into her favorite spot, a booth in the smallest dining room, the one she called my room, to cash out the night's receipts, along with Elizabeth Rutke, the 37-year-old bookkeeper. At around 2 a.m., as they were getting ready to leave, Helen realized that Marty had forgotten to give her the key to lock up properly. Elizabeth offered to drive to the family home at 150 Liberty Parkway to get it. It was a drive that would take about 30 minutes round trip. When Elizabeth returned, the silence inside the restaurant was different, eerie, the kind of silence that makes you hold your breath. As she cautiously made her way to the dining area, she found Helen on the floor, dead. There were obvious signs of a brutal struggle. Elizabeth ran across the street to the police station, but even with officers practically within earshot, the killer had vanished into the night. Police arrived to find Helen lying on her back on the floor of the dining area. She'd been struck on the head and strangled. Bruises covered her face, head, arms, and chest. She was fully clothed in her usual work attire, black slacks, a red blouse, and a white sweater. She had obviously fought for her life, but despite the signs of struggle, her clothing was not disheveled. Someone had straightened it out after the attack. She had not been sexually assaulted. Particles of glass were found near her body. Although there were no glass in her wounds, police suspected that Helen had been struck on the back of the head with a glass object. The attack was so violent that a diamond was knocked from her ring during the struggle, suggesting the attacker may have also used some kind of club. No such weapon was ever found at the scene. The diamond was recovered by police, although it was never made public exactly where it turned up. The cause of death was asphyxiation. Time of death was estimated between midnight and 2 a.m. Police believed there was approximately $750 in the cash box. Whether any of it was taken remained unclear. The immediate theory was burglary. An intruder had hidden inside the restaurant, just as someone had done 4 times before, intending to rob the place after everyone left. When Elizabeth drove away to get the key, the intruder believed he was alone, came out of hiding, found Helen, and killed her. It was a plausible theory, but it came with real problems. In the 1970s, investigative practices were very different. Crime scenes weren't preserved the way they are today. Forensic tools were limited. DNA analysis didn't exist in any practical sense. There was no way to pull fiber evidence or trace DNA from skin cells under the victim's fingernails with the technology of the time. And once investigators settled on a theory, they often stayed with it. In this case, that theory was burglary, and that focus may have shaped everything that followed. Helen was buried after a massive Christian burial at St. Joseph's Roman Catholic Church in Spring Valley. She was laid to rest in St. Anthony's Cemetery in Rockland. She left behind 3 young children. The attention surrounding the murder forced Marty to close the Aegean Grotto. He relocated about 50 miles north to Orange County and opened a new restaurant called Soudani's, an upscale establishment that became known for catering to local politicians and law enforcement leaders. He built a new life, a new business, and a new circle of influence. He also eventually married Elizabeth Rutke, the bookkeeper who had discovered Helen's body. As time passed, the random burglar theory began to fray, and police began looking more closely at Marty. The financial picture that emerged was difficult to ignore. It turned out that Marty had taken out a $500,000 life insurance policy on Helen through the New York Life Insurance Company, before they were even married and without Helen's knowledge or consent. He had signed her name to the policy and to a document transferring ownership from Helen to him. It's not clear whether Helen ever knew the policy even existed. About a year before her murder, Marty applied for an additional $1 million in coverage on Helen through Prudential Insurance Company of America. That brought the total potential payout to $1.5 million, a staggering sum in 1977, worth roughly $7.5 million today. Marty failed a lie detector test. So did Elizabeth Rutke. Publicly, Marty accused police of being abusive toward both of them during questioning. Nonetheless, the Rockland County District Attorney's Office identified him as a suspect. Prudential appointed a legal guardian for the 3 Soudani children, protecting its exposure in the event Marty was ever charged. Both insurance companies became embroiled in years of legal battles with Marty over the payouts. Finally, in August 1983, 6 years after Helen's murder, both policies were paid out to Marty and the 3 children. No charges had been filed, and the case remained officially unsolved. For decades, Marty's alibi for the night of Helen's murder held firm. He said he'd been home all evening with the children. No one contradicted him. Then, in 2004, that changed. Helen Soudani, Marty's sister now in her 60s, and Marty's son, Marty Jr., now 52, came forward, admitting they had lied for him for nearly half a century. According to their accounts, Marty had in fact left the apartment for part of that evening. They said he had forced them to lie to police. Ramapo police publicly reopened the case in September 2024, on the 47th anniversary of Helen's death, asking anyone with information to come forward. But the Soudani story had become far more complicated and far darker than anyone outside the family had known. In November 2023, Helen filed a federal lawsuit against Marty, alleging he had sexually abused her and controlled her for 45 years, beginning in 1977, the same year that Helen was killed. The lawsuit described a pattern of incestuous abuse that Helen says lasted until 2022. In the course of that litigation, something else surfaced. Court and phone records revealed that Marty had paid $63,000 to Stuart Rosenwasser, who was serving as chief counsel in the Orange County District Attorney's Office at the time, to use his position to investigate and prosecute Helen and her son Martin after Marty accused them of stealing $1.6 million from him in a cryptocurrency scheme. When the FBI moved in to arrest both men in September 2024, Marty surrendered. Rosenwasser did not. He barricaded himself inside his home in Campbell Hall, New York, exchanged gunfire with federal agents, and then took his own life. Marty Soudani was charged with bribery, conspiracy, wire fraud, and obstruction. In December 2024, he was also charged with destroying evidence, specifically that he had deleted text messages with Rosenwasser from his phone after being contacted by federal investigators. His trial was scheduled for June 2025. As of the filming of this video, the case remains unresolved. Marty has denied all allegations. He's never been charged with any crime connected to Helen's murder. In the early morning hours of September 28, 1977, Helen Soudani lost her life inside a place she probably believed was safe. A small restaurant, a familiar routine, just steps away from the police station. And yet, no one saw anything, no one heard anything, and no one has ever been held accountable. For years, this case has rested on the idea of a burglary gone wrong, an intruder hiding in the shadows, waiting for the right moment. But as we've seen, some of the details don't fit that explanation. The nature of the struggle, the condition of the scene, the questions surrounding what may have happened in those final moments. And then, decades later, a shift. An alibi that has stood for years, now called into question. A claim that, if true, changes how this case might be viewed entirely. But even with that, there's been no resolution, no arrest, no clear answers. Helen was 25 years old. She was a wife, a mother of 3 young boys. And like so many victims in cases like this, she's become part of a story that remains unfinished. The question now isn't just who was responsible, it's whether the truth was missed, or simply never fully uncovered. Because sometimes the answers aren't lost to time. Sometimes they've been there all along, waiting for someone to take another look. If you have any thoughts or theories about this case, I'd love to hear them. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and may the truth reveal itself in the shadows.